Loudburst. Just what you want to hear.
Even the most familiar place changes as you change. The same area you knew as a child has a different map when you're a teenager, an adult, or in old age. Playgroups, schools, pubs and hospitals all sharpen into focus over time as the previous markers fade.
For us, an almost empty patch of Essex countryside near to where Joel grew up had become tangled with strands of new meaning, as stories had started to knot together, catching round landmarks we'd never noticed before. There were signposts, but they were scrawled with babble, pointing back on themselves or simply unreadable.
The more we followed them, the more lost we became, and now we couldn't use our old map, even if we wanted to.
And now the maps in our heads were about to be redrawn once again.
I'm Joel Morris.
And I'm Will Maclean.
And this is Broken Veil.
Episode 5, Wild Horseradish.
In 1971, a Latvian parapsychologist called Konstantin Raudive published a very strange book. Breakthrough, as it was titled, is a summary of Raudive's experiments in recording ambient noise, in the hope of capturing intelligible communication from the dead. In other words, messages from ghosts.
Some of Raudive's mysterious audio is convincing, some of it quite compellingly so, but none of it is clear enough to counter the very reasonable arguments of skeptics, who tell us that, as ever, the human brain is simply seeking pattern, as it has evolved to do. And what we're hearing in these bursts of static or white noise is not human speech, but simply the sounds of our own imaginations.
Raudive called these possible post-death communications Raudive voices, but the name that really stuck is EVPs, or electronic voice phenomena.
Prior to enhancing our audio from the church, both of us had been sceptical at best about EVPs.
But now we had apparently captured one. 2 or more voices in conversation, discussing something which might pertain to what we've been investigating. It's fair to say that this alarmed us both.
Either way, it seemed we had a new lead, or a new angle into what we already had. Was this whole thing, after all our wild speculations, a ghost story?
This avenue of inquiry made our job easier, simply because every place in the UK has at least one ghost story.
And asking around on message boards, it wasn't long before somebody contacted us with something interesting. We are following a lead, which is leading us, as leads do, out into the countryside in the same direction as before, because This appears to be where it's all happening, on a lead from one of our railway nerds.
Squirrel. There we go. So this is about, this is one of our railway nerds who, I was going to actually say what his name was then, but I don't want to make him searchable. So we're going to call him...
Dr. Beeching.
Dr. Beeching. He's Dr. Beeching. And he's one of our railway nerds, and he got in touch and said that he had something interesting about the railway line is no longer in service that runs through that part of the country.
And that's where we are now. And here we are. And we are looking for a ghost story connected to somewhere that is a house, but used to be something quite different. We had begun to feel, in recent weeks, as if answers to the questions we had were getting tantalisingly close, and now, from our online contact, we'd seemingly learned what one of the pieces of the puzzle meant. This is as far as we can go, because that is now private land beyond this wall.
Already you can see this very distinctive looking house, because it was formerly I imagine the ticket office, I guess, of the house of the the station that was here.
It's station art, it's railway architecture, but it's now a private house, so
you can't see like signals and stuff, but you can see.
Well, we can't go and we have to stop here, but this is, according to Dr. Beeching on our railway helpful forum, this, if you count out from the main line London terminus that the abandoned line went to, this is station 12. The place is now the Heritage Railway, is station 13. And then if you carry on and draw a ruler across the map into the countryside and look for station 14, there is no station 14, and there never was.
We had been dogged by the word Station 14 since we began looking into all this.
We had theorised that Station 14 might be a radio frequency or some kind of secret facility. But now, after speaking to our message board nerds, it seemed that Station 14 was, or had been planned to have been, precisely that. A railway station.
On the one hand, it was good to have one aspect of the mystery resolved once and for all. But on the other hand, it was a disappointment. There was, after all, nothing there. Nothing we could visit. The decommissioned branch line petered out into non-existence. That vast subset of things humans plan but never actualise. We could talk about conflicting realities all we liked. The fact remained that Station 14, at least from where we were standing, was never built.
We had started out thinking that our witnesses had seen something supernatural, and then abandoned this in favour of a more extravagant theory.
But it seemed that one way or another, the ghosts of this place were persistent.
Putting our unease about all this aside, we found the gravel track where the line used to be, the location for the story that we'd got from the railway message board.
The story that Dr. Beeching told us, on top of the information he gave us about the railway line, he said that this walkway that we're on now wasn't always here. And he said that after the railway line got the axe, the tracks were here for a long time. The sleepers and the ironwork was all here. And as a result of that, it got very overgrown, and a lot of kids would come and play along here, as kids always do in derelict or abandoned places, or they certainly used to. Anyway, he said this friend of a friend story of his that went round his school was that a bunch of kids came down here. And at that point it was like, the brambles would have been 12 foot high either side, so they're in the middle of this, and I don't know what they were playing. Anyway,
you're in a tunnel, you're trapped. It's quite, again, it's a long corridor. It's like a rural version of being trapped in a building. At
some point they were playing a game where there was hiding involved, and one of the kids got separated from the others, and he found himself in his eerie sort of pocket of silence. The railway line, just empty, stretching off, and you can only imagine it really, the sun coming down and it getting darker in the middle of a summer day, and it's sort of, and this railway line stretching off with the weeds poking through it from horizon to horizon on both sides. And he said he turned round and he suddenly became aware that there was someone walking towards him, and he immediately said he saw this person, he thought there was something wrong. There was something wrong about the way they walked, where they were coming towards him. And at first he thought it was one of his friends playing a joke. He thought it was another kid. Because of the height, he said there was something quite off about the height. And as it got close enough for him to see it, he realised that this person was missing not only a head, but like a shoulder. There was just something like he'd been cut off diagonally. It's quite an extraordinary thing. He said at that point he ran. It's a great story.
That's amazing. Staring into the sun.
Staring into the sun with this thing just slowly shuffling along the trackway, in between the sleepers towards you. It's quite an image.
And that happened here alongside Station 12.
Yeah, I'm going to turn around now. Yeah. No, there's nothing here. It's a nature reserve.
Both of us are fans of ghost stories, but this particular one was frustrating because it broke our pattern. It was a campfire tale, maybe one to file alongside the Goths and their seance from our last visit.
There was no apparent meshing of different realities, no sense of slow, creeping unease. Just a horrible, disturbing apparition. What did this mean?
The couple of things here. One is it's a friend of a friend story. It's like third, fourth hand. There's all of the usual caveats, but at the core of it, you've got a mysterious thing happening, which I think is interesting.
Someone sees something that doesn't make sense, and they think it's worth telling that story again. Because normally something doesn't make sense, you don't tell the story.
Yeah.
Maybe because it makes enough sense to be worth retelling.
Yeah. And I think that the idea of seeing something like that, which is so, aberrant and against the norm, is intriguing in itself, because it doesn't sound like something someone invented. If it had been purely headless, it's a Ghost 101, isn't it? But the fact that it has that sort of diagonal cut, which is a horrible detail, presumably it's got one arm, and it's just, it's bisected across the torso. It's just, like it's a survivor of some... A survivor, it's got no head. A survivor of some awful accident. And it is it's fun to embroider those stories as well, but that image, the central image of this thing shuffling along a railway line, while the sun sets behind it, is just a pure nightmare.
Yeah.
And that leads me to suspect that there's a kernel of something real in that.
That's where I think the argument about ghosts and the paranormal falls down for me, is that there's the assumption that if you're a skeptic that you don't believe they saw it. And I'm definitely the thing where I think whoever sees something, unless they're just a liar, they did see it. My take on these things has always been that when somebody sees something like this, something patently impossible, which no law of science or nature would permit, it's easy to forget the fact that you're seeing this phantom and everything else you see through the lens of human perception, and then afterwards through the fog of human memory, both of which, as accurate recording apparatus goes, are the absolute worst.
Well, the worst and simultaneously the best available.
Yeah.
You've got a human nervous system is
Yeah.
also it's a terrible thing for memory, and it can be very easily fooled, but it's actually, what else are you going to use?
And so, as is usual with us, a discussion about one thing, in this case ghosts, became a discussion about another thing, human perception.
We're constantly making up stories.
Yes.
Our brain's constantly making up stories about where we are.
Yeah.
And then we tell those stories and we develop those stories, and your brain isn't a video recorder. It doesn't tape it. Every time you tell that story, it makes that story afresh. And I think that's why it's genuinely interesting to say you can be slightly sceptical about ghost stories, but also find it amazing what the human brain can tell you it can see.
There's another explanation, though, if we're coming back to ghosts and the supernatural, what we used to call that, if you like, is that maybe there are these things, these entities that are, but they're only visible in times of, under certain conditions, so times of alienation, times of stress, and they exploit that within the human mind. So that gap in perception you're talking about, maybe that's where they live. Maybe that's where they're present.
That's absolutely fucking terrifying.
It's a very terrifying idea.
That's worse than ghosts.
The other idea is that someone else seeing what was shuffling along the railway line might have seen something entirely different.
Yeah.
It's the other thing, is that it relies on a human nervous system to describe it in a certain way. I mean, these are fundamental questions about, and I'm worried about getting into them because they're completely unprovable.
Despite our attempts to neatly box up this troubling story as another friend of a friend campfire tale, something about it continued to unsettle me. Let's not forget, I grew up not so very far from the area where all this seemed to be happening, and something about this story rang a faint bell. A little while later it came to me and I realised I'd heard this story, or a version of it, or maybe more accurately, a part of it, before. I suddenly remembered a good little story that's only the stub of a story, and that's why it's bothering me. My dad used to drink at the railway club in my town, which obviously is near here. So the railwaymen who worked these railways used to drink where my dad would go for a drink. And he told me a story that stuck in my brain because of the weird details of it. And he said, they always told weird stories, because they did, because they're railway people. And they see strange things, they're tired.
Natural place for ghost stories.
Yeah, I mean it is. It's a straight line. You're trapped somewhere. You're lonely. You're driving a train.
Yeah.
It's a weird place to be. My dad had a mate, and I remember this guy because my dad used to bring home from the railway club jars of homemade horseradish with one of those little cellophane tops and elastic band on it, like you get at a fete.
Like a jam jar.
Like a jam, like a jam stall, WI jam thing. It was horseradish, and it was so hot, because as a kid you can't take it. I said, have some of this. And I said, where the hell did you get this from? And he said, a guy at the railway club sells it, and it's wild horseradish, really fresh horseradish. And he was telling me this story. He said, this guy stops his train. He's a driver on these lines, and he stops his train, says to the passengers there's been a delay, a slight signalling problem, gets out of his cab, and at the verges, the embankments, there's wild horseradish, and he picks it, puts it in his cab, takes it home, makes it. So there's this novelty thing. This guy made this ferocious wild horseradish.
That's amazing.
Yeah, but he was bullshitting his passengers there was a delay. So I really remembered this. And then one Christmas, I remember saying to my dad, I said, we were in the shops in the supermarket down at Asda, and we were buying stuff for Christmas, and my dad picked up a jar of horseradish, and I said, do we need to buy this in the supermarket, because your mate makes it? I mean, I don't like it, but you like it, and you like his. Are we not going to have some of your mate's horseradish from the railway club? And he went, no, because he doesn't get out of his cab anymore. And I said, why? And he said, because he saw something horrible. And I thought he meant an accident or something, that it was dangerous to get down the railway tracks. I'd seen public information films. But when I said to my dad, something horrible, my dad said, I won't tell you because you'll just have nightmares. And he wouldn't tell me. And for me, I just got the brain goes, horseradish guy, he stopped getting out of his cab. If he's from this area on those lines, what did he see? And obviously,
I mean,
what I've got to do now is phone my dad and say, do you remember that story? Because I'm big enough now to hear the story.
Yes, I think
so. Maybe I should get that story off him.
That's amazing.
I called my dad, and he remembered the horseradish, but not the scary story. It was strange because he loves ghost stories, but then he's in his 80s now, and stories slip away, I suppose. Had I imagined it? But then I realised I knew someone who spent his life talking to people on the railways. And if my dad had been told the story, so would other people. So we called my friend Tim. Tim is a lovely enthusiast who makes TV documentaries about railway history, and we went for a drink to ask one question. Heard any good railway ghost stories? And we hoped that if we prodded gently, steering him out to the east, without giving any clues, we might trigger the missing yarn.
The railway, of course, is a great place for telling stories, right? Because it goes throughout our land, and it runs throughout the veins of this country. Everyone's lives are connected to the railway somehow. I mean, part of our identity in our local places and stations you've got rushed past, perhaps as well. You perhaps kind of glimpse things you half think you saw. Was that real? Did I see that station go past? Did I see that person on the platform? Were they real? But there are stories throughout history of railways and ghosts. And railways have often been terrible places because they were poorly governed and poorly built in the first place. And there are lots of deaths on the early railways. There's one out toward the west, a woman who stands at the station even now today. She stands on the platform and apparently just once a month stands there in a red coat. Apparently she was knocked over by a train in the 1920s. I mean, does it happen? Who knows? I don't know. I'm a historian. I deal with facts. Of course, what is a story? You know, it often is a half-remembered thing and a contrived, half-told truth.
Tim is a fan of ghost trains, of missing lines, of forgotten places, and his knowledge of railway folklore is second to none. So he said, have you got anything juicy from the railways of Essex? And he said, I might have just the thing, a story told to him by a friend of a friend that their father had told a friend. One of those stories that railway men swap. So we listened.
It actually goes out beyond London, and it heads out in towards the countryside. So it's in this kind of this odd sort of liminal space. But there was just one train that shuttled up and down this bit of track. It's a single track line. And because it's such a, shall we say, an easy-to-run railway line, the timetable was quite generous. So this friend of a friend's father said, at this middle station, he said, he'd stopped his electric train, he said. Now, it sticks in my mind, this part of the story, because it's so bizarre. Horseradishes.
And at that point, this most unlikely of words caused a shiver to run down both of our spines. We exchanged a glance, but we simply let Tim continue.
Pick them, then take it back into his cab of his electric train, and then apparently then give or sell or whatever flog. I think it was the local railmen's club with his fellow drivers and co back in the mess.
From nowhere, we seemed to have confirmation of the story Joel remembered his dad telling him, or the beginning of it at least. So we listened with rapt attention.
He's coming back into his cab, and he's looking down the line, and it's a very hot day out sort of towards the east of London. And he looks down the line, straight down the line, and he sees another train approaching. And he's like, how can another train approach me? This is an electric railway line, because it's all just one block. You know, you can't have different trains on a single line. You can't overtake, you can't do different things. It's not double track, it's single line. Now, I know this has to be vaguely true, because actually I do know on this railway line you had one train in steam, as they called it. Right. Because one train would shuttle up and down, and there's only enough power on the railway line for one train. Okay. At the middle station, when the train approached it, all of the lights in the station used to dim, because as the train got closer to the power source, the whole power of the station came from the track as well. Right. So that's how I know there's only one train allowed on this railway line. So he comes down the line, and there he is. There's a train heading toward. He says that's impossible. So he thinks I'm going to call. I can't reverse quickly enough. Yeah. So he gets in the thing, and of course he rings, and he calls up control. Back control. It's probably down at Loughton or something like that. And he calls up control, and he says, "What on earth? How is this happening? What's going on? Is it a battery train? What's happening?" He told me I had clearance, because there's no signals down that way. And this strange voice comes back on me, and he says, "It is in hand," says this voice. "It is in hand. It is in hand. It is in hand," the voice says. A strange voice, he says. It's a very odd voice. We've never heard this voice before, because he knows all the controllers down at the control. And the train keeps coming. It's coming towards him, very, very gradually towards him, but still, slowly and steadily, it's coming towards him. And he goes, "Where's the train coming from?" he says. And this voice says, "It's coming from," he says. He thinks, "There's no station called that. It's just one more station, and that is not." And then suddenly, the line goes dead. Looks up, and the train, it is gone. And the train vanishes, that's it.
Never heard the voice again?
I don't know, but that's all I know. Next time I see him, I should probably actually ask this chap, really. But that's why you go back to the source when you're a historian. You go back and you ask the source.
Tim's account diverged from our ghost story and instead moved us sideways, once again, into that familiar pattern, the story of a thing which couldn't possibly be there, but nevertheless was.
However, like Al's story of visiting the bunker, this story presented us with a real destination we can actually visit. There are, up and down the country, decommissioned railway lines which have stayed open as small tourist attractions. I'm particularly fond of the one at Corfe in Dorset. There's even a couple more in Essex itself, most notably at Epping and Ongar.
This line was much smaller than both of these, however, and offered a pleasant trip from a rustic station, complete with ticket office.
We resolved to go there as soon as we could.
By this point, however, it was winter with Christmas looming. So it wasn't until early January that both Will and I were able to get out there. A whole year had gone by looking into this strange story, and it seemed we were no closer to a breakthrough than we were when we started. Well, here we are.
We're here at the Heritage Railway.
There's lots of these. It's anywhere that they threw a line out with the Victorian Railway boom to somewhere, put a pin in a map, said here will be a town. The town grew up.
Railway came first, then the town.
Yeah, they build up around it. So basically they put the pin in the map further up, and suddenly you've heard of a different town. Yeah. A village becomes a town. So this is one of those, and it's beautiful.
Red brick arches.
Ronald Searle, ironwork lamps. Yeah. It's really pretty.
Nice. But it's plate advert for Will's Gold Flake.
The Heritage Station served a short length of restored track, running out of what we now knew as Station 13, into the countryside and back, never reaching Station 12. Or the stretch of abandoned rail that had thrown up ghosts. We guessed we were probably in the right place, but ahead of time, we knew we were travelling to a dead end. But it's just not used anymore, except for tourists to come and pretend they're in Poirot. But it used to be part of the network. There's evidence here, it was electrified.
Yes.
It was definitely busy once.
Yeah. Joel had done some digging and discovered that in the last few years of its working life, this line, like the nuclear bunker we'd visited, had also been privately owned.
And the interesting thing about that is that it closed down
in
1994.
Oh.
Almost exactly the same year as they closed.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't that when our bunker was closed?
Yeah.
Right.
And the paranoid suspicion is that this railway station was actually meant to be used by...
This was the escape route.
Yeah.
This was the fleeing line.
You come up here, you can't use your car, you can't use a helicopter.
Right.
You'd escape out to your safety bunker.
As quickly as you could.
And the moment it stopped being useful for that, they saved money by cutting that arm off.
Wow.
Severing the octopus's tentacle.
Unbelievable.
And it never grew back.
I can see why the conspiracy theories have blossomed around that.
Yeah, it's good paranoia.
That's
fuel.
very, very good.
Yeah.
If you're a conspiracy theorist, this is gold dust. It's a little escape route that takes you straight from the centre of London to a nuclear bunker.
It's perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the only people who use it really are tourists and rail enthusiasts.
People like us. Whatever we are. People, we should go and pretend we're in Poirot.
Yeah, well,
Let's do it.
we're doing detective stuff. Come on.
Yeah, come on, let's do it.
Given how it ended, looking back on this day and hearing recordings of ourselves is strange. It felt at the time, as it always had done before, a fun adventure. But we were heading into deeper, darker waters.
Right, we are about to ride a steam train, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
But it's clearly for research
For
purposes.
psychogeographic purposes and not because we want the cake and a cup of tea.
No.
But
absolutely
so
not.
if we're going to ride it, we probably need to go and get a ticket from the nice people who run this heritage ghost line. So basically, it's a very pretty little ticket office.
It doesn't look particularly decommissioned.
Is that your phone?
It is. It is my phone. One second. Hello?
I waited a moment, assuming Will would deal with the call and we'd continue on our railway trip. But he looked rattled, shaking his head, waving me away and pointing frantically at the exit. I stepped back into the biting January cold before going to shelter in the car.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we need to go. We need to go right now.
Okay.
We need to leave.
What, now?
Yeah, absolutely right now. We absolutely need to get out
I
of
thought
here.
we were going to talk about...
No.
Should we just go somewhere and...
I genuinely don't care. We just need to get out of
So
here.
I stop the tape?
Yeah, please.
Are you all right?
No, I'm not.
Just because you don't look all right.
No,
And you didn't
I'm
look all
not.
right. Who was that?
I've absolutely no idea, but they knew who we were.
Was there a number?
No.
ID?
it's a
Caller ID or
withheld
anything?
number. So they called and I said, who is this? They wouldn't tell me. And they said, don't get on the train.
Don't.
Which implies they're watching us. So I said,
Don't get on the
Don't get
train.
on the train. I said, I'm sorry, who is this? And they said, just don't get on the train.
At this point, there was some discussion about whether to keep recording or stop, and a more anxious discussion about what exactly to do next. And then, the same unknown number sent me further instructions.
I was sent two things. I was sent a QR code, which is ominous enough in itself, and I was then sent a photograph of, well, the opposite of ominous. It was a photograph of a very boring-looking newsagent.
But I recognise that newsagent's, and I think that means there's probably a parcel at that newsagent's, which is what the QR code's for, like an Every or a Hermes or whatever they are, a pickup. But the weird thing is, that's a pretty anonymous newsagent's, and I know it because I go past that newsagent's all the time, and I know it from when I was a kid. And I know where it is. And that means that photograph is the equivalent of like an encryption. Only I've got the key. You can't show that picture on News Agents to anyone else. It only works for me or someone with my background. This is where I grew up where I did. It's a message.
Specific.
They know I will know where that is, so it's unbreakable. It's capture. It's unbreakable capture. Some people get freaked out by ghost stories and headless railway ghosts. I'm now freaked out by a photograph of a newsagent's. It felt odd driving back to a local newsagent's, a place I had passed every day on what was now apparently a secret mission. While Will went to collect whatever it was we'd been sent, I waited in the car, completely uncertain of what to expect. Here he is. He's got something. That's quite big. What have you got? What have you got?
I believe. Fuck.
Yes. That's quite big.
It's pretty big. What we've got here is a jiffy bag, I think, like a cardboard parcel.
Don't open it. We'll go somewhere else.
Okay.
Once we determined that the parcel wasn't ticking, and yes, we genuinely did check, we worked up the courage to open it.
Right, so I think we're far enough away from the newsagents.
Okay. Shall we?
Do you want to do the honours?
Okay. Paperwork. A lot of different kinds of paper.
Someone's accounts.
Someone's account. Lots of bits of newspaper. Yeah, look at that. Railway timetables. Why is someone sending it? Oh, hang on. No, there's other stuff.
I'll take half.
Just about vagrants arrested on the line.
This is just a huge... This is someone's gone into a library and just got everything...
This is some 1950s newspaper clippings. Yeah. Look, April 4th, 1959. This is about... this is about strange stories of the railways. Interesting.
That looks like... That's like a drawing of an owl.
Oh, you got the good pile.
And so, we sat there for 20 minutes or so, going through all this bizarre material that somebody had drawn to our attention.
There's photocopies of old maps.
Yeah, that's
when it was fields. Who has sent all of this stuff?
But if it was the railway stuff, it would be the railway guys. If it's the stuff about the buildings, then it's something to do with the podcast. This is stuff I haven't mentioned in the podcast. This is stuff that I've been talking to friends about. This is someone who knows what I've been looking into, which is stuff about. As you might be able to hear, we were trying hard to cling to the presenter mode you always assume when recording, as we were both becoming properly spooked. And the contents of this strange parcel had one final, startling surprise in store.
Have you been researching the Bilderberg group?
No, that's not... Have you?
Not to my knowledge.
This is...
Because there's a big article about that in here. They're owls, aren't they? They're the owl people. Shit. What is this? Hang on,
there's a pamphlet, or photocopy of a pamphlet, kind of like a chapbook.
Yeah.
Look at that. Strange news.
Oh my god.
Of the scratching mass.
Next time, on the final episode of Broken Veil.
What do you mean?
You're looking at a footprint and calling it a boot.
That's just cryptic. What are we looking at?
Broken Veil was created by Will Maclean and Joel Morris. Music by Philip Morris. Production and additional music cues by Joel Morris. Theme music by Josie M. Clark. Thanks to all our contributors. This podcast is a production of Cheese and Pickle in association with Loudburst.
If you want to say it loud. When you want to get your message across, you need Loudburst. Whether you're an experienced creator or you're new to digital communications, talk to us. We know what you're looking for, even if you don't. With everything from production tools and editing assistance to marketing know-how and integration, Loudburst is with you every step of the way. Loudburst, just what you want to hear.